a chance to share them with us before. But for folks who don't know, and all you got to do is go to Kim Sessums, Sessums, on the internet and find out the extraordinary career from this guy. And it was good hearing about your story. The life story and how you got to where you got. One of the things that I don't think people covered, or it wasn't covered in here, is that creativity woven through your family?
Pretty much. I don't want to get too detailed there, but my parents died when I was young, and I had an older brother and a younger sister, and we grew up in a rural area of Scott County with my maternal grandparents. And my brother's a writer, my sister is a web designer and musician, and so we all sort of, we didn't wake up one day and say, let's see if we can become creative people. It just sort of evolved in the circumstances we found ourselves. I guess there's probably some genetic predisposition, but...
Well, it's not fair because your family got a lot more, and some families like mine didn't get that much.
Well, I don't know about that.
I do want to ask you this, though, when you start looking at all the different stories, and I mentioned this morning, I'm not sure if it's a Guinness Book of World Records, but for you to have consignment on 4 Medal of Honor winners, has anybody ever done that?
I don't know the answer to that, and that was not a planned endeavor. It wound up being... of course, you had Andrew Wyeth, the American painter. You had Billy Graham. You had Eudora Welty. And then the last was Sonny Montgomery. And it was not until I had done the portrait bust of Sonny Montgomery posthumously that it was brought up to me that he was a Presidential Medal of Freedom winner. And I thought, wait a minute, I think these other people were as well. So, it'd be a nice thing to think you set out to do that, but it just turned out that way. It was not really intentional.
I want you to share, because there are a lot of Ole Miss folks who listen to this in the mornings, the story about how the shoes that were ultimately chosen for Johnny Vault is an interesting story, if you'll tell that one.
Well, you're talking about the sculptural monument to Johnny Vault at the north end of the Vaught-Hemingway Stadium, and when I got involved in that, of course, you have to do a lot of research, especially when somebody's already passed away. And so there were a lot of photos and a lot of videos and a lot of discussions with the people who were close to Coach Vault. And in the process of going through that, or with any sculpture, you develop a model or a maquette, which is about a third life size, so that number one, you go through the design elements, anatomy, etc., but you're also making sure when you talk with the people who have commissioned this and who are paying for it, that everybody is sort of getting what they want. So when I showed the maquette, I had a pair of Brogan shoes that had these great shape to them, and I'd seen them in some of the photographs, had laces, and I thought it was really the best part of the sculpture was those shoes were just so good. And I'm laughing thinking about it because some of the old players, Catfish Smith from down here and some of the other guys, came to the studio, and to the man, the first thing they noticed was, wait a minute, you got to have alligator loafers on Coach Vault. And I said, alligator loafers? So they demanded that on the monument, I change the shoes to alligator skin loafers because Coach Vault had alligator skin loafers. And the guys on the team were so envious of this guy having these really cool shoes that one guy told me when he graduated, had a pro career, went on to the business world, and finally made enough money to afford it, he bought a pair of alligator shoes, went back to campus, went into Coach Vault's office, and stuck his feet up on the desk as though to say, I finally made it, Coach.
And what did Coach say?
He said, get your shoes off my desk.
Maybe not that nicely, but he was a remarkable guy.
Apparently so. I had met him a couple of times before he died, and had even thought it'd be a great idea to do this while he's alive.
How much more difficult it is when you don't have a chance to meet that person? Because it was a wonderful story about Billy Graham, and you had a chance to do that. And as a matter of fact, I think you said you were really completed. You had a completed work, but you still weren't satisfied.
Yeah, I thought I did. But when you have the person not only anatomically and proportionally, when you're doing sculpture as opposed to 2D art, you got to have it right in the round. Everything has to be in the right places. And I guess the most obvious example of why a living person is important, well, that certainly Billy Graham was important. But when we did the over life-size sculpture of Coach Boo Ferris up at Delta State, he was 2 years from death when I did that piece. But I was able to go up and visit with him again because I had done a portrait of him before. And even though he was a bit muscle-wasted and feeble and slept through much of the interview, your skeleton's pretty much the same. The bone links are the same and all of that. So when you're measuring, it just makes for a more realistic piece if you have the subject in front of you.
I never thought about this, and you bring it out in the interview. What stage of life do you capture that person?
And that's
where he or she is best known.
Yeah, and I'm running into that. I'm about to do a piece for Blue Mountain College. A lady named Miss Johnny Armstrong was the athlete. She's a fascinating character, and for those in sports world, she was on the first basketball team, girls basketball team in 1952, I think, and then became the coach and then the athletic director, and was very instrumental in women's sports around the country. Very well-respected person. She passed away a year and a half or so ago. But they've called and they want to do a portrait of her outside the gymnasium up there. She was an employee there for 65 years and apparently made a big impact on a lot of people. Yeah. So at a grassroots level, they're raising funds to do this. But anyway, it brought up that, with a 65-year career, when do you portray her? Do you do her at the end of her life? Do you do it when she was a 30-year-old coach? So they selected going mid-range. They want to do her in the early 80s, which then plays into what does she have on? What kind of clothes did she wear at the time? What did her hair look like? That sort of thing.
One of the things I learned about you is that you had tended to go into architecture, and I was listening to that, and I thought as the interview went on, there's a lot of commonalities between what you do in sculpture and that love of architecture.
Yeah, I guess it's subtle and sort of underneath. I mean, architecture can be very, very technical, and I think my love for architecture really fell more into the aspects of design. So that the design part probably would be more related to sculpture and painting and drawing.
Wish we had more time. I want to turn attention to this, that here you are, a world-renowned sculptor and also a doctor. But you chose to stay here at home.
I did.
We were talking with, she was in the studio yesterday, Sarah Thomas, and I asked her that question. She says, wherever she goes, people ask her, why are you still in Mississippi? She says, where else would I want to be? You guys need to come here and see what we're really all about.
Well, yeah, you could do a whole show on that topic, why people stay here, why there's so much creativity in the state of Mississippi, et cetera. But my brother asked me this question many years ago. He said, look, you got something. You need to be in the city. He lives in New York City. And I like living in a small town. David hit the nail on the head earlier when you were talking to him. You get to know the people. We're providing a service here. We've had a wonderful medical practice for the last 32 years. And Steve Mills and I started the practice, and Richard Russian joined us, and Leisha Gray's here now, and Carolita Heritage. But I can make my art in my studio in the backyard. I get to and from the hospital very quickly in a small town. I'm not losing anything by living here. As a matter of fact, I think I gain a lot. Maybe I missed a few opportunities in the big city, but I've had some interesting opportunities.
Key word is maybe. Maybe not.
Maybe not.
Is the other word that goes with that one. I think the people are better off as a community for having you here, so don't leave. Number 2 is we'll never look at the shoes on that statue in the same way. So. Doc's always good talking to you.
Yeah. Saturday now we're unveiling Coolidge Ball at the University of Mississippi, and 50 years ago.
What time?
It'll be at 1 o'clock on Saturday afternoon. Coolidge is a great story. He signed out of Indianola Gentry. The first
Can you hold on for a split second if you don't do that? And Alvin will join us, and we'll make this a 2-way here. I was going to say a 3-way.
Yeah, Coolidge, Saturday at the University of Mississippi will be the celebration and unveiling of a monument honoring the historic contribution of a guy named Coolidge Ball. Coolidge signed with Ole Miss out of Indianola Gentry in 1970. He was the first African-American scholarship athlete at Ole Miss. And you think about today, you can't have sports in certainly the SEC and around the country without African-American scholarship players, and when he signed, it was not an insignificant thing. His family was nervous about it. They didn't know how he would be received, and he's told some very interesting stories about his time there, but he loved Ole Miss. He still lives in Oxford. He's a great ambassador for the university. When they bring kids on campus to recruit, they always have them taught Coolidge ball. So we'll unveil this sculpture. It portrays him in his uniform of the day in 1970, and very exciting times for Coolidge and the university.
What was the year?
1970.
1970. Now, is the bust?
No, it's full body.
Oh, it's full body.
About a 9-foot tall figure on top of a 4-foot base. So it'll be between the Vaught-Hemingway Stadium and the basketball pavilion out there in that courtyard between the two buildings. Tell
me a little bit about the story. I don't want to wait till later and do this interview and find out the story about it. Is there a story about from start to finish on this one?
It's a great story. Well, Coolidge himself, you probably should interview him. He would be a really good interview, especially in today's world. He's a perfect ambassador for making that transition, his personality, his demeanor. He's just a genuine guy. His wife Ruth, and they had 2 kids, and he just is not a guy that is bitter or angry. He loves life. He loves his experience at the University of Mississippi, and he loves talking to the kids about taking an opportunity, to have a chance to extend their career and get a good education.
Unbelievable. And you see so many people like him that march forward, put things behind them and take advantage of everything that they've worked for.
Well, I wouldn't, to use the term put it behind him, I wouldn't say Coolidge is not aware of racial tensions that were going on at the time, but I think he takes pride in the fact that as things would get tense, he told a great story about going to Auburn to play a game one night, and he and the teammates went downtown to eat at a pizza place. Mm-hmm. And the owner told him, no, that one right there doesn't get to eat in here. And the teammates, he didn't know what was going to happen, and the teammates got up and went over to the owner and said, he's the captain of our team. If he doesn't eat here, we don't eat here. And he said, I knew then I was going to be okay.
Those stories need to be told.
They need to be told.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Your thoughts before I let you go, and Alvin's here, and if you want to chime in on it, from a doctor's perspective as far as the Medicaid initiative, which is now underway as far as circulations of the petition to sign on.
What I would contribute, Paul, is I've been practicing medicine for 33 years, and I don't know all the details about all the monies and about the waste in the system and about the philosophy of some people. It's not even about the money. They just think it sort of contributes to a sense of dependency on government funding and that sort of thing. What I do know is on a daily basis, I see patients in my gynecology clinic who are making an effort to work. They have jobs. Mm-hmm. They are not making enough money to afford an insurance plan out of pocket. They're not provided an insurance plan at their job, but they make just enough not to qualify for Medicaid. And they have medical issues, sometimes surgical issues. And it's so sad to be talking to people who are trying to do the right thing, and they absolutely can't get their medical care coverage because they can't afford it. And this plan, this Initiative 76 and Medicaid expansion, we're only one of only 12 states who's not doing it. And you have to think there's politics involved, and there's some sort of philosophical reason for not doing it, especially if the Hospital Association and other people have ways of planning to try to match the co-payment. So it just doesn't make any sense, and it breaks your heart for people not to get care.
From your perspective as a doctor, one of the great leads on this to further it alone is to say that if that insurance was there, some of the preventative care could ultimately save the taxpayers money.
Well, hopefully so, and that's a good point. I think where the rubber hits the road is right now there are people in crisis.
Yeah.
And we obviously take care of the people. We've done surgery for free. The hospital has been very generous to help us try to get people in and out. But it's a financial burden on the providers, the hospital's providing for this community in a wide area. And this would make a huge difference towards, and it's not like we have people that are just sitting at home waiting for somebody to give them something. They're working.
We were one of the worst states in the nation, of course, when it came to infant mortality rates. And I think we've gotten a little bit better over the years, but we're still in the top, somewhere in the top.
Always a sensitive topic for OB-GYNs in the state of Mississippi, because we're all trained, we're all board certified, as anybody in any other state would be. But we are in a poverty area, and it's been generations and generations of poor eating habits, poor exercise, just communicated from one generation to the next. And so we inherit a lot of patients with a lot of problems. It's not that we're not providing good care, but we're starting with difficult, high-risk patients.
Bond, have you seen that awareness increase as far as prenatal is concerned over the years?
Tremendous efforts in the state, and to work on this, to try to make contact early with early prenatal care, Paul, but we still have people who show up out of the blue upstairs in this building that are 33, 34 weeks pregnant and haven't seen anybody.
For the first time, they come in for the first time. It's got to be aggravating.
Well, it's sad and it's frustrating, and you want to shake the patient and say, we're providing this care, all you got to do is come to the clinic. But these are complicated issues, and those of us who don't live in those circumstances, it's hard for us to comprehend it.
I think the movement, it's how fast things don't change in the state, is the WIC program. When we got the word that they've kind of retooled the WIC program, where they shut down the buildings and you can just go and use the card within any supermarket you wanted to. I thought that should have happened 15, 20 years ago. But Alvin, your thoughts?
The initiative is out there for those folks that have been working hard, that want to take care of themselves, that want to provide for their own family needs, and that just don't make enough money. If you're making $8.50 or $9 or $10 an hour, if you got 1 or 2 or 3 kids, the money's not going far enough to pay for insurance.
No.
And that insurance is being provided at no charge through the services of the hospital and physicians who provide the care for them because those patients need it.
Is there, in your business as far as gynecology, are there things that are new technically on the market? And I know every new device that comes out that helps you in your practice has got a price tag on it, like just unbelievable, kind of shocking. But are you able to keep up with some of that? And you go to Alvin and say, Alvin, well, we need this piece of equipment. And Alvin says, have you seen the price tag of that thing?
Well, Alvin, let me pat him on the back. I've been here a long time, and Alvin's done a tremendous job, both with human resources here, but also providing just what you're talking about. But he's realistic enough to be able to come to us and say, hey guys, I know you need this, but how are we going to pay for it?
Yeah.
And so creatively, he's figured out ways to try to keep us at the standard of care of what everybody else is providing around the country. And we're doing that here in a small hospital in southwest Mississippi. But it's mostly because he's been able to figure out ways to make that happen without hurting any other departments or any aspects of the human resource part. But yes, it's a strain, and I know he's under a lot of pressure, and it's about to drive him into retirement.
Well, 15 or 20 years from now, we'll talk about that.
Well, it might be sooner than that.
Well, it is constant, but I know it's one of the things that you'd like to see before you might make that announcement, is to that Medicaid expansion. What would that do for this community if you talk about maybe 200,000 people statewide? How many do you think in your service area would that add? You ever looked at that?
No, I don't know that specific number. It's hard to know what that number is, but we deliver here between 650 and 700 babies a year, and that's a lot of care. Some of those parents are on Medicaid already. A lot of them are already on Medicaid. Yep. Medicaid provides for that. This insurance would provide a way for some of those parents to have insurance.
One more time before we leave, the event on Saturday is when?
1 p.m. Between the stadium and the pavilion, and that's going to be a great day for Coolidge Ball and Ole Miss.
It's going to be a big event, so make sure you're